Hi, hello once again, everyone. So, in this live, I'm going to be talking about prepositions of time. I'm going to show you some examples with at for precise times, clock times, meal times, and specific parts of the day. For example, at 9 a.m., we can say, I eat breakfast at 9 a.m. I eat breakfast at 9 a.m. All right, that's one example. Let me give you another example. At noon, at night, I go running at night. I go running at night. At night. Now, when we talk about the evening, though, it changes a little bit. We don't use at. For example, I usually go running in the evening. So when we talk about evening, we say in the evening. I I jog or I go jogging. I jog in the evening. That one is a little bit different. In the evening. Show you a couple more examples here. We say for days of the week, dates and specific days or holidays, we use on Monday, on Christmas Day, on my birthday, on the weekend, or at the weekend. So let's use on. I have an appointment on Monday. Oops, I don't have enough room. I have an appointment on Monday. On Monday. Couple more examples here. On my birthday. I like to eat cake on my birthday. Cake on my birthday. Who doesn't like to do that, right? I think everyone likes to eat cake on their birthday. Okay. Another example with on. I hang out with my friends with on or at the weekend. I think my light is too bright here. Weekend. We say on the weekend And our friends in Britain usually say at the weekend. Okay, hopefully that looks a little better. Okay, so let's talk about in for preposition of time. In the evening, in the afternoon, in June, in morning, in a few days. So when we talk about in, we talk about longer periods of times, months, years, seasons. For example, summer begins in June. In June. Or a season. We like to go sledding in the winter. Notice in the winter. Let me see another. Or, for example, I I am traveling in a few days. In a few days. Gets a little dusty here. Okay, so we've talked about in. Now, we also can talk about in terms of years. Uh, so, for example, let's talk about last year. I went to I went to a zoo in 2005. In 2005. Now, I'm going to talk about the difference between dates when we use in or on. I know I've made a lot of videos about this. So when we use on, we use specific dates. For example, I I'm just making this up. I was born on July 24th, 1971. Now, when we use exact dates, we use on July 24th, 1971. But if we just mention the year, we just use in. For example, I was born in 1971 in July. So notice we just use in and in instead of using a specific date with on. We really have to make that distinction. All right, let's talk about other important prepositions. For example, before. So if we say, I eat breakfast before work. Before work. I think all of us do that, right? Breakfast is, they say breakfast is the most important meal of the day to get you going. Not always, not everyone agrees with that. Show you a different one. After is also used as a time after the movie. We went home. Now, when we use certain prepositions or specific words, it also prompts us to use different uh, tenses. For example, after the movie, which is past tense, we went home. So this is a past tense irregular of go. After the movie, we went home. All right, another one, by. When we use by, we usually have before a time event or after a time or event. For example, I'm sorry, a deadline. I'm sorry, by was used a deadline or not later than a certain time. If I tell one of my workers or my students, please finish the report or please turn in the homework or please turn in your, I'll just abbreviate homework by Friday. So that means that I want my students to turn in their homework by Friday, no later than Friday. Okay, let's use, or another example with by would be, please be here by a certain time. Please be here by 9 o'clock. No later than that. All right, let's use till, or we shorten it up till, like that. Up to a certain time or event. The store is open. Wait, oops. The store is open until 9 p.m. That means up to a certain time or event. After 9 o'clock, the store will be closed. So if the store is open at 9 a.m. in the morning and it is open until 9 p.m. Okay, let's talk about since. It gets really dusty in here because I use chalk. Now I know you guys I usually use white chalk marker, but that's a little more expensive. Okay, let's talk about since. Now, also keep in mind that when we use since, that prompts us to use a specific tense, a specific point in the past until now, with often the present perfect. So I'll write this down. For example, I lived here. I have, that's a contraction. I've lived here since 2015. Now, we can also use for, but in a different way. So I could say, so from 2015, let's just say I'm doing 2026. I would say, I've lived here for 11 years. It means the same, almost the same thing. However, we use since and here we use for. So since and for the present perfect. Okay. Let's use another example using for. I studied for 2 hours. For 2 hours. So when we use for, it's a duration. So let's say it's 1 p.m. So if I say 2 hours, it's going to be 3 p.m. Right? From this start, if I started at 1, means I studied or whatever time you started at. So from here to here, 2 hours. For 2 hours. Okay, let's go down the line and talk about several more. During. So during is another preposition of time. During basically means throughout the duration of an event or time period. She slept, and sometimes I do this. She slept during the flight or even the movie. During the flight. Okay, during within. Let's talk about within. Within means no later than a specific period from now. For example, if I say, I'll be back within an hour. Now, if somebody says that, it means that I expect, if somebody tells me that, I would expect that person to be back within an hour. So let's say this is the clock. So if that person tells me at 1 o'clock, they'll be back within an hour. That means they should be back within an hour, perhaps not later than an hour. And if that person is here after, then they would probably call me. But within an hour means that person should be back within an hour's time or less. Okay, let's talk about from. As you can see, this gets really dusty. Okay, from. From a starting point to an ending point. I work from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. from. So those are some different prepositions of time. Now I'm going to try and explain some other examples, but just bear with me as I get my examples up and running. Okay. Point in time. Let me see if between range. My board keeps messing up here. There we go. Let's talk about between. Basically means that it's a between the space of 2 points, between noon and 2 p.m. For example, sometimes you have a delivery, right? Sometimes you order a stove, a refrigerator, or a sofa, and the company calls you and tells you, we will be there between, we will be there between noon, which is 12 p.m., between noon and 2 p.m. That means that they could be anytime between 10 p.m., 12 p.m., and 2 p.m. They're going to be here. It could be earlier within this, or it could be a little closer to 2 p.m. or in the middle somewhere. So that's what between means. I haven't talked about ago. Ago is used to talk about the past relative to the current moment. So if you did something a long time ago, then you say it's between a time in the past relative to now. Oh, I saw, let's say you saw a friend and you haven't seen that friend for a while. And you say, the last time I saw her was 5 years ago. I saw her 5 years ago. All right. Now, I don't know if anybody is asking any questions in the chat, but you are certainly welcome to do that. Okay, so let's talk about past. Past. And when I say past, I'm not talking about like, I'm not talking about this one. I'm talking about this one. So we say it's 10 past 6. That means we use here in America, obviously, we use 6, 10. So if I say it's 10 past 6, it means it's 6:10. That's how we use this one here. Okay, let me look up a couple more examples with time. So let me go back to my examples. I'm going to use just randomly use some examples here. At. I get up at 6 a.m. I get up at 6 a.m. At 6 a.m. Or I can say, I stepped out at lunchtime. Stepped out of the office. I'll just say I stepped out at lunchtime. There. Let me see a couple more. Now, at night, we use My brother works at night, usually third shift. Works at night. All right, let me look for some more examples. So I'll use on, and I can say on Tuesdays, I go to the gym on Tuesdays. Okay, so let's talk about a couple more. On New Year's Day, on the 30th of July, at breakfast time, at lunchtime, at dinner time, at break time, and a couple more examples with times at 6 o'clock, at 9:30, at I'm going to use a military time. So if we say at 1300, that means 1 p.m. here in the United States. Just want a reminder that here in the US, we use on the weekend. And our friends in the UK use at the weekend. Now, there's also a phrase that, what did you do over the weekend? Over the weekend. That means from evening on Friday to Sunday. Now, I know there's a lot of there are countries that start their week different than when we do. Here in the United States, we call the weekend usually Saturday and Sunday, even though Sunday is usually the start of the week. Really, technically, some countries start their week. It's actually Monday through the weekend. Okay, let's see. In the evening, we don't say at the evening. We say in the evening. I usually relax in the evening. Now, you can also add something else to that. I usually relax in the evening after I get home from work. Notice how you use a lot of prepositions in here. In the evening after I get home from work. All right, let me see if I can come up with some more examples here of some prepositions of time. Okay, let me see some more examples. I love skiing at winter or during the winter. A couple more examples with on, because that those are kind of popular. I will meet, or let's say, I will call you in 30 minutes. Oops. My equipment just kind of collapsed here. All right. This is the challenge of doing live, um, doing lives, because when stuff really goes wrong, it goes wrong. All right. So I will call you in 30 minutes. All right. So I'm going to have to end this live because I'm having some technical issues, but I'll be back at some point. I'll be back. Thank you for watching.